Welcome back to Season 2 of the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and I am so grateful that you're joining us. When I started this podcast last year, my primary goal was to normalize the experience of imposter syndrome, to make it easier for us to talk about, and to access the support that we deserve. I am so grateful to everyone who has shared their stories with me, and I'm fascinated by the linkages between imposter syndrome and so many other facets of our lives. The conversations that we had last season led us in so many powerful directions. I'm excited to continue these conversations in Season 2. As always, if you have a story to share, please reach out to me. I would love to interview you. And if I can ever support you on your own imposter syndrome journey, I'd love to connect on that too. Thanks again for being here. Welcome, Theo. I have been looking forward to this conversation for such a long time. I'm so excited that you're here, and I would love to start by just having you introduce yourself.
Kim, thank you so much for having me. This has been the week of weeks. We're only 8 days into January, and here I was thinking, we're just going to have this, pretty neutral conversation, and the world has changed. So This will probably be the most benign conversations after electoral college. And I'm sure so many of us have gone through a million electoral college counts, and none of us will remember. We will remember this one.
You're absolutely right about that.
Thank you for having me here today. And we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, how many people could start their job search. And there's so much more to 2021 than just losing 20 pounds, which I have to do, by the way. But
don't we all after a year in quarantine, right?
The COVID-19 diet, that's what I call it, from the fridge to the couch. Yes,
exactly.
That's my exercise route.
So you and I have had I have certainly had the privilege of having previous conversations with you about themes related to what we're talking about today. And I'd love to start just by asking you, what does imposter syndrome mean to you? Like, how has it shown up for you, if at all? How do you think about it?
Well, it actually started, oh gosh, it's going to make me sound really old, like 30 years ago when I was in college. And I went to a very good high school. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of those people, you kind of look at their academic backgrounds and you go, she's always had it easy, or she's always been to those exclusive schools. And I have, because that's been always my value set. That, as an immigrant who came to America, my mother came to this country in 1968, left 5 kids in Trinidad by boat to live with my grandmother. And she came to America cleaning toilets with my father to come to this country. Wow. And brought us here to get educated. And I always felt I was an outsider. So I always felt I was an imposter because I wasn't really quite American and I really wasn't quite from the Caribbean. So I always felt I had to fight a little harder. And when I ended up going to my university, it was one of the better ones in the country. And I was doing pretty well. But of course, I was a student that was on financial aid. So here you go. You're with these country clubbers, literally. And I served, this is where I got my eating problem from, Kim. I worked at the country club in the catering department. So one quick story. I was catering an event at the Dartmouth Country Club. And I remember I saw this beautiful young woman that I went to high school with, Megan Thomas, wonderful. She's probably married now, so hopefully it's 30 years ago, Megan. I think you're awesome. So if you hear your name called, this is a good thing. And I remember seeing Megan, and she was tanned, blonde, and perfect. And I'm from Trinidad, short, and have like dreadlocks and a nose ring. And I'm there serving scallops wrapped in bacon. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I need to go hide in the kitchen so Megan doesn't see me serving food at Dartmouth College. That's how far back my imposter syndrome goes. I was scared to be seen as the person serving food at the country club, that I did not belong. And here I am, I'm attending the Ivy League school as a student, and I still felt I didn't belong.
Mm.
I then got into law school. And I remember as I said, I'm from Trinidad, so I had braids and, funky hair. And the other law school students were like, are you sure you're going to be able to get a job looking the way you do? This is from
Oh my,
people of color asking the gasp, right?
wow.
Nowadays you don't think anything of it, but this is 1991, 1992. They're like, are you sure you want to wear braids, Theo? And this is mind-boggling when you think about it in 2021.
Mm.
So I'm thinking I'm not going to be able to get a job because I have braids or I have hair that makes sense for a person of color, somebody from Trinidad. I look like somebody from Trinidad. So I think I've been plagued with imposter syndrome my whole life because I felt I was a fraud. I felt I didn't look the way I should. I always felt I wasn't smart enough because I am dyslexic. I was diagnosed in college, and all of the country club kids, they were getting 95, 96 in Spanish class. And then when we had Spanish labs, which had 9 people where they had to do everything fast in real time, I was getting 85. So I was considered at the bottom of the class getting an 85% B at Dartmouth College. This is the whole reality spectrum shift. So they pulled me aside and they're like, because I'm the financial aid student, they're like, do you need help? And I'm like, gosh, I must need help. I'm getting an 85 in this Spanish class. And they gave me a tutor. I was able to get one because I had financial aid. And the tutor's like, this stuff. And what's your grade? I said, I'm getting an 85. And she's like, I usually get people that are getting 60s. And here I am with an 85 percentile grade. And the tutor's like, you really don't need help. But again, I was afraid. And I had people that were advocating for me throughout my whole academic career, starting in college. So my whole life, I felt that imposter. You kind of get you're only here because you are a financial aid student and you're an affirmative action candidate, even though I'm the only person of color in the whole firm. So I'm still feeling guilty because I went to an Ivy League school, I went to law school, and I felt like I never had a place at the table. So maybe that's a long, short version of my perception of my imposter syndrome.
I really appreciate your sharing that. And you hit on so many of the underlying factors that contribute to imposter syndrome. And just the word belonging really jumped out at me, right? The sense that I don't belong for X, Y, and Z reasons, right? And it's something that we feel so viscerally, right? Like if we feel like we look different than other people, we think differently than other people,
Oh, absolutely, Kim. And nowadays with Instagram, I don't have an Instagram account. Thank God they've kept me away from Twitter because I would have been banned ages ago. So, so now we're back in a world again where we're compared. We're never going to have that perfect shot. And one of the things that we were going to talk about today is it takes 50 shots and filters to get that perfect shot. And it's okay for that shot not to be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought us to that, because one of the things I was thinking about as you were telling your story is that what you're describing is just makes so much sense to me. Right. But and when you and I talk, you have so much you have so much confidence and you have such a great attitude, and there's so many layers to each one of us, right? We can't tell from the surface what's really going on within everybody else, but like, how have you come to a stronger place in terms of your own sense of self and confidence in what you have to offer?
Well, Kim, it's kind of like how they say, just be yourself, because being someone else isn't going to work. And it is hard to keep that facade up of perfection. And you hear so much. I think for some reason, before this last year with the COVID-19 lockdown, you really didn't hear the concept of mental wellness that much. it existed in the background, but it was that dirty secret.
Mm.
And over the years, you've kind of have to get this little Teflon shell over yourself. And when people tell you, well, you're not really attractive enough, or you're not really smart enough, or you're not really tall enough, or you're not really XYZ enough, you start developing this shell. And then, you know what? I have conversations with my friends who are like runway models, literally runway models. And they're like, I can't get a date because I'm not attractive enough. And I'm looking at these people going, as I'm nibbling on my Haagen-Dazs bar, just, with my elasticized waistband going, are you serious? But everybody has their own demons. And I think as we look at our careers, something we're going to discuss a little bit later, and how we succeed and how we move forward, we have to have an unrelentless belief in ourselves and our capacity to do better and move up in life, no matter what our status, whether it's financial, whether it's physical, whether it's academic. We can't limit ourselves, or we should not pre-limit ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know you've been on a journey in your own career, right? And trying to identify the best opportunity and maintaining confidence and on the roller coaster of life, right? What if we sort of segue more fully into this piece about we're here, we're in 2021, thank God we all made it through 2020.
Yep.
I love that you said everyone has their own demons, right? I think every one of us is relating to what you're saying at some level, no matter what our background is. We've all been there to some extent, right? So as if we're on the cusp right now of doing something different, we're in a job search, we're thinking about making a job search or making a job change, what's most important to you to think about in the context of what we're talking about?
I always tell people to be brave, because this figure has been going around, like every few years there's a new number that comes out and everybody talks about it. Well, the new number that came out this last year was, if a woman applies for a job, she wants to have 80 to 90% of the qualifications to apply for the position. If a man has 10% of the qualifications, he'll go, I got this. That's my bro dude. That's my bro dude boy. So no, I can do that. And for people to say I'm sexist, when guys talk about women, they go, whoa, 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 like Charlie Brown. Adults. So when I hear a guy talking, I hear, they hear, I hear, oh. So we kind of hear things differently, but men will apply for jobs they're absolutely barely qualified for. And you know what? They'll get an interview and they will possibly get the job. Whereas we're like, oh my goodness, they want 50 things. Plus they want me fluent in Mandarin Chinese, ancient Mandarin Chinese. I can't do this. Whereas a guy's like, where's China? And he'll get the job. So we have to be brave. I'm saying to women and anyone that's applying, you don't look at academics, don't look at things you've done, look at what you have the potential to do. Because I'll tell people, they look at my background, and like I said, I'm not gonna lie, I have a very good academic background. I have a very good work background, excellent. I mean, and I get turned down for opportunities like anybody else. I get, and I'm going to whitewash it, I get the Friday FU email like everybody else, where you go through all of the interviews, you have all these fantastic conversations. Oh my God, you're the number one candidate. Oh, And then Friday at 8:59 p.m., you get the email. Oh, we had somebody from the pet department that was just so much more wonderful than you, Theo. So we gave it to them, but thank you for trying. Good luck. So everybody gets those emails. Do not feel bad. You have to gain a thick skin and be daring, apply.
And I love that you said that too about everybody getting those emails, because when you're the one getting that email at 8:59 on a Friday night, it feels so personal and so lonely, right? There's this sense of like, oh,
have the wine ready, have the glass of wine ready. And don't get stressed. I consider the job search like dating. Right now I'm not looking. I'm doing really well where I am now. But when you are in this meeting game, you have to get ready to swipe left. That's the new term. I'm trying to be hip here, Kim. You got to be ready. You have to be ready to swipe left and say, this isn't going to work for me. Be selective in your options and realize that they may do the same for you. So if you don't hear back, it's like dating. If you go out to this nice dinner with this person and you don't hear back from them for 2 weeks, you're not going to hear from them. Don't feel bad if a company does the same thing to you. Go, well, I guess I got swiped left, and keep it moving and keep on dating. Don't take it personally. It is personal. Don't get me wrong. Everybody, trust me, when I get that 6, 7, 8, 9 p.m. email, I get salty. Trust me. Everybody does. And there's something wrong with you if you don't. But don't cling to it. Don't be the stalker. Don't be, fatal attraction. Well, why didn't I get the job? You know what? It wasn't meant to be.
You're right. I think that perspective is really important because it is hard. It's hard not to over personalize it and to feel victimized by these circumstances that are really outside of our control. But one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about in particular too is how effectively you have engaged other people. Because I think part of the job search process is, applying for these positions and going through the formal interviews. But one thing that you are just a superstar at is connecting and really reaching out and building personal connections that have allowed you to get access to opportunities that maybe if you had gone through more traditional channels wouldn't have been available.
Well, I think that we're all lucky now. It's as terrible as this COVID-19 thing is. It's a thing. It's more than a thing. It's become a way of life. It's teaching us all that we have to learn new ways to communicate. And oh my goodness, Kim, I would have never met you if I hadn't read an article or a post on LinkedIn or somewhere else about you. Mm-hmm. And guess what? There was nothing blocking me from sending you a polite note on LinkedIn saying, Kim, I read about your service. I see you're doing great things. I'd love to be in your network. 5 years ago would have been impossible, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can reach CEOs of major corporations now by looking at one of their posts, commenting out it, and reaching out to them personally and going, I like what you're doing with your volunteer school systems. This is amazing. I'd love to be in your network. Be safe. And this year I have found by just sending polite notes and telling people, look, I like what you're doing, but be safe out there with COVID-19, sending good health safety vibes to you and your family. That resonates because we're all people. Mm-hmm. So I think that what has happened in this world with everyone being remote has almost started to level the playing field. And if you see people at certain firms that you're interested in, reach out to them. See what they're doing in their volunteer field. Do they like animals? Do they volunteer to the Boys and Girls Clubs? Connect that way. So I don't think I'm doing anything new and unique. I've just worked in a remote capacity for so long. I feel confident. Like when I reach out to somebody, it's as if I'm talking to someone. It's very natural for me. And I think people feel like they've got to be stilted or very formal when they reach out to people, whereas sometimes you could reach out to a CEO and go, like what you're doing. I'm so, proud of what, your advocacy work for children in third world countries. And guess what? They'll accept your invite on LinkedIn. Mm. And it's just by humanizing things. So I believe we're all ultimately human, as different as we are. We all have commonalities. And this is a little side story. And I was feeling bad. I feel bad for myself a lot, Kim. You know how you just feeling bad for yourself. I was feeling bad for myself. I was in New York. This is before the COVID situation. And I had an 11-hour plane delay. And I was taking the shuttle bus back and forth. And I jumped out of an Uber at some point, and my cell phone got run over. One of my cell phones got run over by the Uber driver. And it's raining outside. So I'm just like, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm at the airport. I'm sitting in one of those little portable wheelchairs they have by the door, slumped over, feeling really bad for myself. And this older woman, maybe in her 70s, comes up and goes, "Honey, are you okay?" Because I'm crying at the airport. This is all the imposter syndrome. I'm thinking how bad my life is, how terrible it is, And someone comes up and she's like, "Are you okay, dear?" And I said, "I'm having a bad day." And she goes, "No, that's all right. You're going to be okay." And we start talking. And I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" She goes, "Well, I'm going to visit my brother. He's dying." And I'm like, "Oh." And she said, "I got kicked out of my house by my daughter because she has a new boyfriend. And I want to make sure I see my brother before he dies." And I'm thinking, I don't have problems. I'm like starting to like look in my wallet to give this poor woman money. And then, this is about 1.5 years ago. And then she opens her bag, she's rummaging through her bag, and she gives me a medal. And I still have this medal. I'll send you a picture after this, Kim, a little medal. And it's some saint. I'm a heathen, so I didn't know what saint it was. And then she reaches into her bag and she pulls out a "Make America Great" hat. And she goes, "I just got this in the gift shop. Isn't it wonderful?"
Oh my God.
And it made me realize humility at that moment. And I said, her name was Mary. And I said, you know what, Mary? We all have different points of views, but it's okay. And I didn't feel like an imposter at that moment, but I felt like I had to be a bigger person. And sometimes, no matter what we do in life, whether it's looking for a job or something, we have to be bigger people. So
wow,
I just had to put that story in because I just love, Mary was just the story of the year for me.
I love that story. And it just shows that when you break it all down, right? Just like you said, we're all humans. You had a moment with someone that you probably would have, I don't mean you personally, but any of us would have prejudged. If let's say she was wearing the hat before she approached.
She was wearing that. Yeah, exactly. So don't prejudge when you apply for jobs. Don't prejudge when you look at somebody's profile. Just don't overlook all of these things, and the experiences you can have will be amazing. Trust me. You don't know what the path is going to take you, Kim, but the opportunities are endless. So be open to everyone, be open to everyone.
I love it. And I love that you're not, so when you talk about reaching out to, let's say, the CEO, and I love that you're not telling yourself a story that person is more important than you are, that they are not interested in what you have to say, right? All of the things that we use to talk ourselves out of taking that risk and making that bold move. But you're also not forcing yourself, and I think you used a good word when you said stilted, right, into some really professional, strategic message that you think is going to be, it is going to resonate. Like you chose the human angle. You chose the thing that's probably more heart centric to him than anything you could say about, like, "Oh, I saw your earnings report." Right?
Oh my God! Let me tell. It doesn't matter who you are. These people all have children. They all have families. They all have things that they do, not from 9 to 5, but from 5 to 9 after. And that's what matters to them. And when we start making contacts, this is what gives us power when we're doing our 2021 career search. It's not just going to be about a job. You can kind of get it. If you just want to go to Costco and work, that's a good job for some people. So I'm not going to decry it. I'm happy for anyone that makes a legal, legitimate living. I have nothing but respect. My father was a retired janitor when he passed away, and my mother had her master's in public health. So you can't look down on how anyone makes a living. But we have our differences, but that doesn't mean we won't have our challenges. So.
Yeah. And well, one of the things that you're making me think about too is, and I've said this to various people who have shared with me that they get really intimidated by other people's statuses. So all of a sudden I'm in a room with somebody who's more senior to me and I start to question my value, or I stumble over my words. I get really uncomfortable, self-conscious. I hear this kind of thing all the time. Right. And I always try to remind people of situations where you're out at a networking event, or, you're out somewhere, maybe you're on an airplane or something, and you strike up a conversation with them. You know nothing about them. You strike up a conversation, lovely conversation, you're getting to know each other. You're feeling good. It's going well. And then all of a sudden you find out that person is at 3 levels above you. Right. And then it changes things. It's like, oh my gosh, did I say something stupid? I can't believe I was just talking to this. Right. Nothing changed. There's nothing that the fact that person is at a different level or in a different functional area than you didn't change the fact that you were having a lovely conversation. You were feeling perfectly comfortable in it a moment ago. Right. So it's these things that we do to ourselves that often hold us. It's not the other person. It's not their I mean, in some cases it is, right? There are people who wield their power in inappropriate ways, but for the most part, it's us. It's the walls that we put up, the stories we tell ourselves that, this person is too big for me to connect with.
100%. I'll tell you a little sidebar story. I was approached by a very large firm a couple of years ago for a fantastic opportunity. And the SVP, or I don't know what, he wasn't an SVP at the time. He actually sent me an email and said, Theo, can you send over a copy of your resume? And I'm like, sure, my resume is pretty legit. And he said, I'll give you feedback on it. So I'm waiting, a few hours, and every minute seems like 2 years, you start smoking and drinking, even though you don't drink, maybe that glass of wine. And then finally I got a response. And this is part of not knowing who we're speaking to and us being confident. So the email came back, and it was the person that approached me and another person. And the other gentleman said, Theo's got a good background, but my question to her is, why isn't she further along in her career? And it was sort of written in the third person. And I'm like, wow, these guys are ballsy. So well, let me tell them what I think about them. So I put as a title in the email, why is Theo not a vice president? So I put that in all capital letters in my email response. And I said, well, I've stayed in a safe role because I'm a woman of color and I was afraid to move. I was in a position where I didn't have the opportunity to get promoted. So that's why I'm not a vice president. I responded, it was very professional. And then I get an email 2 minutes later and said, Theo, you weren't supposed to be on that email. We sent it to you by accident. So here I am mouthing off about why I am not a vice president and I'm not even supposed to be on the email. And I'm like, woo, because I got brave because I just didn't know who I was talking to, like you said. So I was like, oh, they're asking me a rhetorical question. Well, I'll rhetorical them back. And I ended up going forward for a few more phases of the interview. And they said, I'm pretty sure it was my age. So for people out there that are a little bit older, 40 plus, 50 plus, be brave. Age discrimination is real. It exists out there, but you have to be persistent because the knowledge you bring to the table is key and it's important. And the new generations coming up need you. They need you. They need someone to mentor them. And we've seen this in the last year or two, in this last year, especially where the offices are empty. You have these people that are new grads and there's no one to ask questions to. So your skills are essential. But I basically didn't get the position because I was too old. Literally, I was too old. And then they said, you're overqualified. But the HR person contacted me a couple of weeks later and offered me a position 2 levels down.
Oh, wow.
So this is where imposter syndrome kicks in. And I think this is where I said, I got to find it, Kim. and I need help. So I found a coach, working with your services, because we need a coach. We need a mentor, somebody that we can bounce things off of. And all of the best athletes have a coach, somebody that can hold them accountable, make sure they do their 50 push-ups. Maybe I only need 10 for you, Kim, but I do the push-ups, I make sure I meet my goals. We all need coaches. And then ultimately we need sponsors. And that's something that I want the people in this call to understand. There's a mentor, there's a coach, and there's a sponsor. Mentor is semi-volunteer. Loose conversations, I would feel, give you some direction. A coach is somebody that really makes you have accountability and have goals that are attainable and reachable. And a sponsor is somebody that's very fortunate that can help you move ahead with your career. And these are people you don't even know. It could be that fairy godmother or fairy godfather from nowhere that can help you with your career. One of the most distinctive recent memories I have of a sponsor is this partner when I was in private practice in a consulting firm. And I remember, when you're a person of color and you're one of the big 4 consulting firms and you're at a desk, kind of keep your head down. You don't want anyone to notice you. You just keep your head down and look busy all the time. And this partner had an office that would walk back and forth past my desk. And I think a couple of times I told him he had cool shoes, and that was it. And at one point I got stuck in an airport with his wife, and his daughter, who was going away to university for the first time. And I stood there with his wife and daughter, and I asked his daughter about what it was like, what she was going to school for. And we just had a really lovely conversation. 2 months later, he walked up to my desk and he goes, Theo, aren't you graduating with your master's in cybersecurity soon? And I said, oh, yeah. And he goes, okay. Walks away. A month later, I get an email from him and said, January 1st, 2018, you'll be on the cybersecurity team. I've called my partner on the cyber group and they're taking you in. And it's a group that was impossible to get into. Wow. He became my sponsor. And that's how sponsorship is. I had no idea this person was a sponsor. I'd never asked him for anything, nothing. And he advocated for me. So
I love that story.
So realize we have allies all over the place, and you don't have to be somebody that cushies up to people or kisses up or whatever. This was just, just me having a nice conversation with his lovely wife and daughter. And that was it. That's the only more than 5-minute conversation I can recall having with this man.
I just love this so much, because I think there are so many people who believe that you have to play the game, right? That this is politics, that you have to engage in inauthentic behaviors that make you feel dirty or uncomfortable. And what you're describing is that you have been very authentic. You've been yourself. You've been reaching out to people in very human ways. And this is what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you, Kim.
And I want to ask you a question too, just to kind of bring us full circle from where we started when you were talking about, you mentioned, the braids and people saying, do you think you can get a job? And just tying that into authenticity. I know there's a lot of conversation about that these days too, right? What would you tell people about what's important in terms of authenticity as a woman of color, as a woman in general, just as someone who maybe looks different from the people around them?
You know what? Be yourself. Honestly, I have to tell you, be yourself. And some of the oddest and people, their temperature sort of rise when I tell them some of these conversations I've had in my interviews. I remember one interview, I had some funky braids in my hair. It's just how my hair was at the time. And the interviewer said, I need to ask you a really personal question. I'm thinking, oh, geez, I wonder what it is. You don't know what's coming when somebody goes, I don't want to offend you. You're going to be offended.
Yeah.
And they said, can I touch your hair? And I was like, that's weird, and I said, yeah, sure. Ask me questions about it. And they just asked me, and the woman just touched like just a tip on and she's like, thank you so much. It's like, I don't mean to be racist, but my granddaughter is biracial and I don't understand how to comb her hair. And you start to realize people are human.
Wow.
And she just never she didn't know any other women of color. She'd never been in close proximity with one where she could ask that question. And it was kind of before you could go on the blogs and look up stuff on YouTube. So, I mean, I can never pass. And I don't want to. As I get older, I'm like, I wanted to be 5'11", this and that, and I'll just never be that, We have to accept ourselves and the gifts that we have. We have to find our superpowers. I'm still working on finding mine. And Kim, you're going to help me hone that in. That's what everyone needs a good coach for, to hone in on their superpowers. So I have to find out what I'm really good at. I'm still working. I'm a work in progress.
But I think that combination that you're talking about is so powerful, right? Find your superpower and be yourself, because any attempt to try to be someone that you're not, to try to, fit into a group that you don't feel values you or is sort of out of alignment with what you need in order to do your best work and be your best self, is just going to set you up for constant self-doubt and confidence challenges and frustration and all kinds of things. And there's just so much opportunity for us to embrace who we are and reach out to the people around us that are going to help us to get there.
Yeah, and reach out to others. Like I said, there's so many people out there that just want somebody to say hello to them. If you haven't spoken to somebody in a while, send them a text. Just say, did you see what happened in the Capitol? And, just chat with them, and people will just explode with energy and just be happy because they're not living the lives that they're used to. So 2021, we're going to learn a lot of things. We're going to learn to look for new careers differently. We're going to learn to socialize differently. We're doing everything differently this year. And it's going to evolve. It's just, we just don't know what's going to happen in the next 90 days. I mean, we just lost our mayor in Boston.
Yes.
Just lost our mayor, Marty. We lost Marty. Marty's going to work with Joe.
That's right. All kinds of change. Yeah, you're right.
Change is coming. And as a woman, as a person of maybe a foreign origin, be brave. It's okay. You got to doubt you. I mean, people doubt themselves, but reach out there, make those connections. I think that, Kim, that's the one thing I want people to leave this call with. Make those connections. Just don't send an invite on LinkedIn. Send that person a note. It'll make their day. It really genuinely will make their day if they can get a note from somebody that seems like they care.
Absolutely. I'm so inspired by you, and I'm so grateful to have this conversation with you today. And I hope that if nothing else, everyone takes away that one piece of advice to just reach out, right? Even though it's scary.
It is.
We're going to tell ourselves all kinds of things to keep ourselves from doing it. Be brave and make the connection.
Make the connection, because that connection will lead to another connection and another one. So, and don't limit yourself. Don't just say, I'm only going to, connect with people in one field. Because you're not someone I would normally connect with. I would probably normally connect with somebody in cybersecurity or law or something like that. Be open. And I'll tell you, I love your posts. I love the energy. I'm always reading them, and
thank you.
And I love sharing them. No, absolutely.
Thank Thank you so much, Theo. You've given us so many great insights and things to think about and do going forward. I am so grateful to you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Kim, and have an amazing, amazing new year. And if there's anybody out there that wants to personally connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm a Theo, Theo, Gray McCarthy. So it's all one word, Grey McCarthy. And I'm always on Kim's LinkedIn posts and squawking about something. And every Friday, I do Bob Marley Friday. So don't ask.
Yes, I want to point everybody to that too. And if it's okay with you, I can even put the link in the show notes so people can.
Oh yeah, hashtag Bob Marley Friday. So if you guys are just worn down from Zoom calls with the kids all week and you want to get some positive island vibes.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you again, Theo.
All right, you have an amazing week, Kim. Take care.
Thanks again for listening today. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome and you'd like additional support, check out the show notes for more resources or contact me directly. I would love to help you. And if you'd like to tell your story, I would love to interview you. You will find my contact info in the show notes, so reach out anytime. Thanks again.